The night sky over Montana burned with colors that should not exist. Sarah Chen stood on her porch, coffee cup frozen halfway to her lips, watching something impossible streak across the darkness. It was not a meteor. Meteors did not scream as they fell. This thing howled through the atmosphere like a wounded animal, trailing fire and debris in a path that lit up half the valley. "Mom," Marcus burst through the screen door, his phone in his hand. "Are you seeing this?" Sarah was already moving, setting down her cup and grabbing her truck keys. "Get the emergency kit from the barn. The big one." "Mom, we should call—" We will. After we see if anyone needs help." "Move, Marcus." Her 17-year-old son knew better than to argue when his mother used that tone. They had lived on this ranch all his life, and Sarah Chen had taught him one simple rule. If someone needs help, you help first and ask questions later. The object crashed about 5 miles north of their property, beyond the ridge where Old Man Patterson's cattle usually grazed. The impact shook the ground hard enough that Sarah felt it through the truck's suspension. A pillar of smoke and dust rose into the night sky, visible even in the darkness. Sarah drove fast but careful along the dirt roads. Marcus sat beside her, his face pale in the dashboard light. "What if it's— it could be a lot of things," Sarah said. "Could be a plane. Could be a satellite. Could be something else entirely." "You mean aliens?" Sarah did not answer. She just drove. The crash site was worse than she expected. The object had carved a trench through the earth nearly a mile long, throwing up walls of dirt on either side. At the end of that scar sat what could only be described as a ship, though calling it that seemed generous. It looked like someone had taken 10 different vehicles and welded them together with hope and desperation. Pieces of it were still smoking. Other pieces looked like they had been repaired a dozen times with whatever materials were available. Sarah parked the truck at a safe distance and grabbed a flashlight. "Stay close to me. If I say run, you run. Understand?" Marcus nodded. His hands were shaking, but he followed his mother toward the wreck. The ship's hull was cracked open in several places. Through one of the larger gaps, Sarah could see movement. She approached slowly, keeping her flashlight pointed down so it would not blind anyone inside. "Hello, anyone in there? We want to help." The movement stopped. Then slowly something emerged from the darkness of the ship. Sarah had seen a lot in her 50 years. She had pulled calves in the middle of blizzards, faced down mountain lions, and once talked down a man with a gun who was 3 days into a mental breakdown. But nothing had prepared her for this. The creature was about 4 feet tall, covered in a shell that reflected her flashlight in rainbow colors. It had 6 limbs, though 2 of them seemed to be used mostly for manipulation rather than walking. Its head was dominated by large, multifaceted eyes that caught the light like jewels. When it opened its mouth, a sound came out that was not quite speech, but Sarah understood the emotion behind it perfectly. It was terrified. "It's okay," Sarah said softly, the same tone she used with spooked horses. "We're here to help. Do you understand?" The creature tilted its head. Then it tapped something on its chest and a voice came out, crackling and distorted. "Help, yes, please, many hurt. Children hurt." Sarah felt her heart clench. "Marcus, get on the phone. Call Doc Morrison first, then Sheriff Bradley, then everyone else on the emergency list. Tell them we need medical supplies, water, blankets, and every pair of hands they can spare. Tell them—" She paused, looking at the creature. "Tell them we have refugees." The next hours were chaos, but it was organized chaos, the kind that small communities do better than anyone. Doc Morrison arrived first in his old pickup, took one look at the alien creature, said, "Well, that's new," and started asking about injuries. Sheriff Bradley came next, and instead of drawing his weapon, he started directing traffic as more vehicles arrived. Sarah's neighbors came. The Pattersons brought medical supplies from their barn. The Nguyen family brought food and water. The Martinez family brought tarps and poles for shelter. Old Tom Wilkins, who claimed to hate everyone, showed up with his entire stock of emergency blankets. More creatures emerged from the ship. Sarah counted nearly 200 of them. Most were injured. Many were in shock. All of them were terrified. Through the crackling translator, their story came in pieces. They were called the Velani. They had been running from something terrible, something they called the hegemony. Their ship was not meant for fighting or even for long journeys. It was a transport, packed with families who had lost everything. They had jumped through space blindly, desperately just trying to escape. They had meant to reach an empty system where they could hide and repair their ship. Instead, They had crashed on Earth. By the time the military helicopters appeared on the horizon, Sarah's valley had transformed into a refugee camp. The Villani sat among humans, receiving first aid, drinking water, eating food that their translators had assured them was safe. Villani children, smaller than human toddlers, clung to their parents while human children watched with wide, curious eyes. Sarah stood between her community and the approaching soldiers. She was not afraid. She had right on her side, and she knew it. The military commander who stepped out of the helicopter was a woman about Sarah's age, with hard eyes and a harder expression. "Ma'am, I'm Colonel Rodriguez. I need you and your people to step back. This is now a federal situation. These people are hurt," Sarah said. "They need help, not interrogation. They're also unknown aliens on U.S. soil. We don't know if they're dangerous. Do they look dangerous to you, Colonel?" Sarah gestured at the Villani. One of them was having a broken limb set by Doc Morrison. Another was feeding water to a child. A third was simply sitting, head in their hands, the universal posture of despair. Colonel Rodriguez looked. Really looked. Her expression did not soften, but something changed in her eyes. "I have my orders." The night sky over Montana burned with colors that should not exist. Sarah Chen stood on her porch, coffee cup frozen halfway to her lips, watching something impossible streak across the darkness. It was not a meteor. Meteors did not scream as they fell. This thing howled through the atmosphere like a wounded animal, trailing fire and debris in a path that lit up half the valley. "Mom," Marcus burst through the screen door, his phone in his hand. "Are you seeing this?" Sarah was already moving, setting down her cup and grabbing her truck keys. "Get the emergency kit from the barn. The big one. Mom, we will, after we see if anyone needs help." "Move, Marcus." Her 17-year-old son knew better than to argue when his mother used that tone. They had lived on this ranch all his life, and Sarah Chen had taught him one simple rule. If someone needs help, you help first and ask questions later. The object crashed about 5 miles north of their property, beyond the ridge where Old Man Patterson's cattle usually grazed. The impact shook the ground hard enough that Sarah felt it through the truck's suspension. A pillar of smoke and dust rose into the night sky, visible even in the darkness. Sarah drove fast but careful along the dirt roads. Marcus sat beside her, his face pale in the dashboard light. "What if it could be a lot of things," Sarah said. "Could be a plane. Could be a satellite. Could be something else entirely." "You mean aliens?" Sarah did not answer. She just drove. The crash site was worse than she expected. The object had carved a trench through the earth nearly a mile long, throwing up walls of dirt on either side. At the end of that scar sat what could only be described as a ship, though calling it that seemed generous. It looked like someone had taken 10 different vehicles and welded them together with hope and desperation. Pieces of it were still smoking. Other pieces looked like they had been repaired a dozen times with whatever materials were available. Sarah parked the truck at a safe distance and grabbed a flashlight. "Stay close to me. If I say run, you run. Understand?" Marcus nodded. His hands were shaking, but he followed his mother toward the wreck. The ship's hull was cracked open in several places. Through one of the larger gaps, Sarah could see movement. She approached slowly, keeping her flashlight pointed down so it would not blind anyone inside. "Hello, anyone in there? We want to help." The movement stopped. Then, slowly, something emerged from the darkness of the ship. Sarah had seen a lot in her 50 years. She had pulled cabs in the middle of blizzards, faced down mountain lions, and once talked down a man with a gun who was 3 days into a mental breakdown. But nothing had prepared her for this. The creature was about 4 feet tall, covered in a shell that reflected her flashlight in rainbow colors. It had 6 limbs, though 2 of them seemed to be used mostly for manipulation rather than walking. Its head was dominated by large, multifaceted eyes that caught the light like jewels. When it opened its mouth, a sound came out that was not quite speech. But Sarah understood the emotion behind it perfectly. It was terrified. "It's okay," Sarah said softly, the same tone she used with spooked horses. "We're here to help. Do you understand?" The creature tilted its head. Then it tapped something on its chest and a voice came out, crackling and distorted. "Help, yes please, many hurt. Children hurt." Sarah felt her heart clench. "Marcus, get on the phone. Call Doc Morrison first, then Sheriff Bradley, then everyone else on the emergency list. Tell them we need medical supplies, water, blankets, and every pair of hands they can spare. Tell them—" She paused, looking at the creature. "Tell them we have refugees." The next hours were chaos. But it was organized chaos, the kind that small communities do better than anyone. Doc Morrison arrived first in his old pickup, took one look at the alien creature, said, "Well, that's new," and started asking about injuries. Sheriff Bradley came next, and instead of drawing his weapon, he started directing traffic as more vehicles arrived. Sarah's neighbors came. The Pattersons brought medical supplies from their barn. The Nguyen family brought food and water. The Martinez family brought tarps and poles for shelter. Old Tom Wilkins, who claimed to hate everyone, showed up with his entire stock of emergency blankets. More creatures emerged from the ship. Sarah counted nearly 200 of them. Most were injured. Many were in shock. All of them were terrified. Through the crackling translator, their story came in pieces. They were called the Velani. They had been running from something terrible, something they called the hegemony. Their ship was not meant for fighting or even for long journeys. It was a transport, packed with families who had lost everything. They had jumped through space blindly, desperately just trying to escape. They had meant to reach an empty system where they could hide and repair their ship. Instead, they had crashed on Earth. By the time the military helicopters appeared on the horizon, Sarah's valley had transformed into a refugee camp. The Velani sat among humans, receiving first aid, drinking water, eating food that their translators had assured them was safe. Velani children, smaller than human toddlers, clung to their parents while human children watched with wide, curious eyes. Sarah stood between her community and the approaching soldiers. She was not afraid. She had right on her side, and she knew it. The military commander who stepped out of the helicopter was a woman about Sarah's age, with hard eyes and a harder expression. "Ma'am, I'm Colonel Rodriguez. I need you and your people to step back. This is now a federal situation. These people are hurt," Sarah said. "They need help, not interrogation. They're also unknown aliens on U.S. soil. We don't know if they're dangerous. Do they look dangerous to you, Colonel?" Sarah gestured at the Velani. One of them was having a broken limb set by Doc Morrison. Another was feeding water to a child. A third was simply sitting, head in their hands, the universal posture of despair. Colonel Rodriguez looked. Really looked. Her expression did not soften, but something changed in her eyes. "I have my orders, and I have mine," Sarah said. "Help those who need it. That's the order I follow. If you want to talk to them, you can do it here, with witnesses while they're being taken care of. If you want to take them away, you'll have to go through me and about 50 other people who feel the same way." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Colonel Rodriguez spoke into her radio. "Command, Rodriguez. I need medical teams, not combat units. And get me someone from state. We're going to need diplomats, not soldiers." The relief Sarah felt was overwhelming, but she did not show it. She just nodded. "Thank you, Colonel. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get complicated." She was right. By dawn, the valley was full of military vehicles, news helicopters, and government officials. But the soldiers who arrived were carrying medical supplies, not weapons. The tone had been set in those first hours, and everyone was following Sarah's lead. These were refugees, not invaders. Marcus sat beside one of the Velani children, a small creature that had wrapped one limb around his hand and would not let go. The child was making a soft humming sound that seemed to calm it. Marcus hummed back, and the Velani child's eyes brightened. Sarah watched her son and felt something shift in her understanding of the world. First contact, real first contact, was not happening in some government facility or United Nations building. It was happening here, in a Montana valley, between a scared alien child and a human teenager who just wanted to help. One of the adult Velani approached Sarah slowly. Through its translator, it spoke. "You are leader here?" "Not really," Sarah said. "Just someone who showed up first." "You chose help, not fear. Not attack. Why?" Sarah thought about that question. She thought about her grandmother, who had come to America with nothing and been given a chance. She thought about her late husband, who had always said that character is what you do when nobody is watching. She thought about Marcus and the world she wanted him to grow up in. "Because you needed it," she said simply. "That's reason enough." The Velani made a sound that the translator did not catch, but Sarah understood anyway. It was gratitude, pure and overwhelming. The creature touched her hand gently, its shell smooth and warm. "You are good people. We were told humans were complicated, dangerous, but also capable of great kindness. We did not believe. We were wrong. We can be all those things, Sarah admitted. But we get to choose which one we'll be. Today we chose kindness. More humans arrived as the sun rose. News of the crash had spread across the country, then across the world. But before the politicians and the bureaucrats could arrive, before the debates and the arguments could start, something important had already happened. Ordinary people had made a choice. They had chosen to help. They had chosen to see refugees, not invaders. They had chosen compassion over fear. And that choice, made in a small Montana valley by a rancher in her community, would change everything. Sheriff Bradley approached Sarah as she was distributing water to a group of Villani. Sarah, you know this is going to get big, right? Bigger than anything we've ever dealt with. I know. People are going to have opinions, strong ones. Some folks won't like what we did here. I know that too. And you're okay with that? Sarah looked around at the scene before her. Humans and aliens working together, helping each other, beginning the first fragile steps toward understanding. It was messy and chaotic and uncertain, but it was also right. I'm better than okay with it, she said. This is who we are at our best. This is who we should be. If people don't like it, that's their problem. The sheriff nodded slowly. You know, my grandfather used to tell me about when his family came over from Ireland. They were refugees too, running from famine, and some people wanted to turn them away, said they were different, dangerous, that they'd ruin everything. But others chose to help, chose to be kind, and here I am, 3 generations later, wearing a badge and protecting this community. Exactly, Sarah said. That's exactly it, Marcus called out from across the camp. He was waving his phone. Mom, it's on the news. They're calling this the Montana Miracle. Sarah walked over to her son and looked at his phone screen. The footage showed her valley, filled with humans and Villani working together. The headline read, First Contact, Humanity's Choice. It's not a miracle, Sarah said quietly. It's just people being decent to each other. That should be normal, not miraculous. But as she watched the footage spread across the internet, watched the comments pour in from around the world, she realized that maybe it was a kind of miracle, because people everywhere were watching and asking themselves the same question. What would I have done? Would I have chosen fear? Or would I have chosen compassion? And for the first time in a long time, humans around the world were seeing the best of what they could be reflected back at them. They were seeing that when faced with the unknown, when faced with beings from another world who needed help, humans could choose to be kind. The Villani who had spoken to Sarah earlier approached her again. What happens now? It asked through the translator. Sarah looked at the alien being, at her son sitting with the Villani child, at her community working alongside these refugees from the stars. She thought about the world watching, waiting to see what humanity would do next. Now, she said, we figure it out together, one step at a time. And in that moment, with the sun rising over a valley full of 2 species learning to coexist, Sarah Chen had no idea that she had just helped set in motion events that would define humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. She just knew that she had done the right thing. Sometimes, that is all that matters. The video went viral within 3 hours, a simple clip filmed on Marcus Chen's phone, a Villani child reaching out with a trembling limb, and Marcus taking it gently in his hand. No words, no explanation needed, just connection. Within 6 hours, it had been viewed 50 million times. Within 12 hours, the world had chosen sides. President Elena Rodriguez sat in the Situation Room, surrounded by advisors who all wanted different things. The Secretary of Defense wanted the aliens in a secure facility. The Secretary of State wanted UN involvement before any decisions were made. The Director of National Intelligence wanted access to their technology. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had a plan. What does Sarah Chen want? The President asked. Her Chief of Staff looked surprised. The rancher? Ma'am, with respect, she's not. She's the one they trusted first, Rodriguez interrupted. She's the one who set the tone for this whole thing. Before we make any big decisions, I want to know what someone with actual common sense thinks we should do. They patched Sarah through on a video call. She was still at the crash site, looking exhausted, with dirt on her clothes and a Villani child sleeping against her shoulder. Ms. Chen, the President said, thank you for taking my call. Ma'am, Sarah nodded. What can I do for you? You can tell me the truth. Are we in danger? Not the official assessment. Not what the intelligence community thinks. Your gut feeling. You've spent more time with these people than anyone. Are they a threat? Sarah looked at the sleeping child on her shoulder, then back at the camera. Mr. President, they're terrified of us. They crash-landed on a planet they'd been taught was full of dangerous, unpredictable beings. They expected us to kill them. Instead, we brought them blankets and medical care. If they're a threat to anyone, it's only because they're scared, and scared people do desperate things. Treat them with respect and dignity, and they'll be the best neighbors you could ask for. And if the people who are chasing them come looking, then we'll deal with that when it happens. But right now, right this moment, we have 200 refugees who need help. Everything else is speculation. Help first, worry later. The president smiled slightly. You sound like my grandmother. Your grandmother sounds like a smart woman. After the call ended, Rodriguez looked around the room at her advisors. Thoughts? The Secretary of Defense spoke first. Ma'am, we need to establish protocols. We can't just let civilians handle first contact with an alien species. They already did, the president pointed out, and they did it well. Better than any protocol we have would have managed, I'd bet. But the security implications are real, Rodriguez agreed. But so is the humanitarian reality. These people are refugees. We have laws about refugees. We have treaties. We have supposedly values. If we start treating them like prisoners or experiments, what does that say about us? It says we're being cautious, someone offered. It says we're being cruel, the president countered. And the whole world is watching. More importantly, I'm watching. I became president to make the hard choices, and this one isn't even hard. It's just hard to do because of politics and fear. But the right thing? That's obvious. She turned to her Secretary of Homeland Security. Draft an executive order. Temporary protected status for all Vellani refugees. They get the same treatment we'd give anyone fleeing persecution. Medical care, housing assistance, legal representation. We do this right. Ma'am, Congress will... Let me worry about Congress. You worry about making sure those people in Montana have what they need. The order went out that afternoon. The president addressed the nation that evening. My fellow Americans, she began, and my fellow citizens of Earth, because tonight we speak as one planet. Yesterday, something extraordinary happened. Refugees from another world crashed on our soil, and in that moment we had a choice to make. Fear or compassion, suspicion or help. And before any government could make that choice, ordinary people made it for us. They chose compassion. They chose help. And today I am making the same choice on behalf of the United States of America. The speech was simple and direct. The Vellani would be given temporary protection while their ship was repaired. They would have access to medical care, food, shelter, and legal rights. Any nation that wished to offer sanctuary could do so. The UN would coordinate international support. We are a species that has spent too much time fighting each other, Rodriguez concluded. Perhaps it took visitors from the stars to remind us that we are all part of the same human family. And perhaps it is time we extended that family to include those who need us, not because they can offer us technology or advantage, but because it is right, because compassion is not weakness. It is the strongest thing we can be. The reaction was immediate and divided. Half the world praised the decision. Half condemned it. But something interesting happened in that division. People started talking. Really talking, not just shouting at each other. In Tokyo, a Buddhist temple offered sanctuary space. In Cairo, an Islamic charity organized medical supplies. In Mumbai, Hindu organizations raised money for refugee assistance. In Rome, the Pope declared that the Vellani were children of God, from a different garden but beloved nonetheless. But there was also fear. Protests erupted in major cities. Humans First movements gained traction. Some countries closed their borders entirely, refusing to accept that aliens even existed. Internet forums filled with conspiracy theories. Politicians used the crisis to gain support, painting the Vellani as everything from spies to the vanguard of an invasion. Sarah watched it all from her ranch, which had become the unofficial center of the relief effort. News crews were everywhere, but she refused most interviews. She had work to do. The Vellani had begun to open up more as they realized they were safe. Their leader, an older female named Shektara, spoke through her translator with growing confidence. We were part of Colony Fleet, she explained to Sarah over makeshift dinner of human and adapted Vellani food. 20 ships. We escaped our homeworld when the hegemony came. They conquered us, enslaved us, said we existed to serve their empire. Some of us refused. We took what ships we could and ran. Where are the other ships? Sarah asked. Shektara's bioluminescent patterns dimmed, the Velani equivalent of sadness. We do not know. We scattered. Each ship went different direction. This way, if some were caught, others might survive. We hoped to find empty system, dead planet maybe, somewhere to hide and rebuild. But our navigation was damaged. We jumped blind and found you. I'm sorry you lost your home. I am sorry too. But also, Shektara made a gesture with her limbs that her translator interpreted as surprise. Also grateful? Is correct word. We crashed on planet full of beings we were told were primitive and dangerous. We expected death. We found kindness. This is confusing. But good confusing. Marcus joined them, a Velani child riding on his shoulders. The child, named Kliktar, had become inseparable from the human teenager. Mom, Click's family wants to know if we have something called ice cream? The translator's having trouble with it, Sarah laughed. Tell them we'll introduce them to ice cream tomorrow. It's one of humanity's greatest achievements. The days turned into weeks. A kind of routine developed in the valley. Human engineers studied the Velani ship, amazed by technology that worked on principles they were only beginning to understand. Velani shared what they could, teaching willing students about their science and culture. In return, humans taught the Velani about Earth, about human history, about the complicated, messy, beautiful thing called humanity. The Velani were surprised by human music. They were fascinated by human art. They were confused by human humor but tried to learn it anyway. And slowly, carefully, friendships began to form. Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, who everyone called Doc, made a breakthrough in cross-species medicine. The Velani had a compound in their biology that accelerated healing. Combined with human surgical techniques, they could treat injuries that would have been fatal before. When Doc successfully saved a Velani who had been dying from internal injuries, both species celebrated together. But the outside world remained divided. The UN debated endlessly about what to do. Some nations wanted the Velani moved to an international facility. Others wanted them returned to space immediately. A few wanted them studied, dissected, analyzed. President Rodriguez stood firm. They stay where they are until they're ready to leave. And they leave only when and where they want to go. That's not negotiable, the pressure mounted. Her approval ratings dropped. Her own party began to fracture. But she would not budge. And slowly something started to shift in public opinion. More videos emerged from the Montana Valley. Velani and human children playing together, making up games that required no common language. Velani adults teaching human farmers techniques for enriching soil. Human doctors working alongside Velani healers. People saw not aliens and humans, but just people. Different kinds of people, but people nonetheless. The hashtag "You're Refugees Not Invaders" trended for weeks. Artists created works celebrating unity. Musicians composed songs about hope and connection. Teachers started including lessons about the Velani in their classes, not as aliens, but as the newest chapter in the human story of migration and perseverance. 6 weeks after the crash, the UN General Assembly voted. It was close. It was contentious. But when the votes were counted, the resolution passed. The Velani would be granted refugee status under international law. They would have rights, protections, and the freedom to stay or leave as they chose. Sarah watched the vote on television, Shektara beside her. When the result was announced, the Velani leader made a sound like wind chimes, which her translator said meant joy. Your people did this, Shektara said. Your species, so divided, came together. For us, why? Sarah thought about it. Because enough of us believe that being human means being humane. It means helping those who need help. It means choosing what's right over what's easy. We don't always get it right. We fail more often than we succeed. But sometimes, when it really matters, enough of us make the right choice. This is what makes you special, Shektara said. Not technology. Not power. This choice to be better than your fears. That night, President Rodriguez called Sarah again. We did it, Ms. Chen. Against all odds, against all the cynics who said it couldn't happen, humanity made the right choice. You made it possible, Madam President. You stood firm when it would have been easier to give in. I just followed your example, Rodriguez said. You showed us what courage looks like. It looks like a rancher in Montana who saw people who needed help and didn't hesitate. The rest of us just tried to live up to that standard. After the call, Sarah walked outside. The valley was quiet now, most of the news crews gone. The Velani settlement glowed softly with their bioluminescence, creating patterns in the darkness that were almost like art. Marcus came to stand beside her. "What happens now, Mom?" "Now we figure out how to live together," Sarah said. "How to be neighbors, friends, maybe even family. It won't be perfect. There will be problems, misunderstandings, conflicts. But we've made the hardest choice already. We've chosen to try. Do you think it'll work?" Sarah looked at her son, then at the glowing settlement where two species were learning to coexist. "I think if it doesn't work, it won't be because we didn't care enough. And caring counts for a lot, maybe more than anything else." In the settlement, Kliktar was teaching human children a Velani game involving light patterns and memory. In the makeshift hospital, Doc Morrison and a Velani healer were sharing notes on treating a human patient with a broken leg. In the community center, someone was teaching English while someone else taught the Velani language. Life, messy and complicated and beautiful, continued. And across the world, people watched and learned. They learned that fear is easy but compassion is strong. They learned that the unknown is less scary when you meet it with open hands instead of closed fists. They learned that humanity, for all its flaws, could be extraordinary when it chose to be. The day humanity chose compassion over fear became the day that changed everything. It was not the end of fear or the end of problems, but it was a beginning. And sometimes that is all you need. 6 months had changed everything and nothing. The Montana Valley still looked mostly the same, rolling hills and wide sky, but now it glowed at night with soft bioluminescent patterns. The Velani had built their temporary homes among the human structures, creating a patchwork settlement that was neither fully alien nor fully human, but something new. Sarah Chen had learned 73 words in the Velani language. It was not much, but it was enough to say good morning, ask if someone needed help, and tell the Velani children to stop climbing on her barn roof. The children found this last command hilarious and ignored it completely, much like human children everywhere. The ship repairs were progressing slowly. This was partly because the damage was extensive, but mostly because two species with completely different technological foundations were trying to understand each other's engineering. Human technology relied on circuits and electricity. Velani technology used something they called biocrystal matrices that grew and adapted. The human engineers were fascinated. The Velani engineers were frustrated but patient. "It is like trying to explain color to someone who has only known darkness," said Tekvan, the Velani chief engineer. He was speaking to a group of human technicians, his translator rendering his clicking sounds into accented English. "You see electricity and wires. We see energy and living patterns. Both work. Both are technology. But explaining how one works using words from the other is very difficult." James Park, the lead human engineer, nodded thoughtfully. "So instead of trying to make your ship work with our methods, we need to help you repair it using your methods. We're assistants, not repairmen." "Yes, exactly yes." Tekvan's bioluminescent patterns flashed bright blue, which the humans had learned meant excitement or happiness. "You understand? This is good. This makes repair possible." The cultural exchange went both ways. The Velani had been shocked to discover human music. Their own species communicated partly through bioluminescence and partly through sound, but they had never developed music the way humans had. The first time someone played them Mozart, 3 Velani had to sit down from overwhelming emotion. Now there were jam sessions in the community center 3 nights a week. Humans played instruments while Velani created light patterns to accompany the music. The result was something entirely new. A fusion of art forms that neither species could have created alone. Videos of these performances went viral worldwide, watched by billions. Marcus Chen had become something of a minor celebrity. The video of him holding Kliktar's limb had made him the face of human Velani friendship. He hated the attention but loved his role as unofficial liaison between Velani and human young people. He had learned to understand Kliktar without the translator most of the time. They communicated through a mix of words, gestures, and shared experience. "Your species is very loud," Kliktar said one day as they sat on the ranch fence watching the sunset. He was bigger now, having grown several inches in the past months. Velani matured faster than humans. "Your species glows in the dark," Marcus countered. "That's got to be distracting." "It is how we talk sometimes, like your face expressions. When you smile, it means happy. When we glow green, it means content. Same thing, different method. I never thought about it that way." Marcus pulled out a piece of grass and chewed on it thoughtfully. Do you miss your home? Your real home, I mean. Before the hegemony, Clicktar's patterns dimmed slightly. I was very young when we left. I remember sky that was purple, not blue. I remember buildings that sang in the wind. I remember my grandmother who did not come with us. He paused. But this place, your Earth, it is becoming home too. Is it possible to have two homes? I think so, Marcus said. My great-grandmother came from Taiwan. She always said she had two homes in her heart, one where she was born, one where she chose to be. Maybe it's the same for you. They sat in comfortable silence, two young beings from different worlds watching the same sunset. But not everything was peaceful. The protests outside the valley had never completely stopped. A group calling itself Earth First had established a permanent presence near the valley's borders, demanding the Villani be expelled from the planet. They were mostly peaceful, but sometimes things got tense. Sheriff Bradley had his hands full managing the situation. I don't agree with them, he told Sarah one morning. But they have a right to protest. Long as they stay peaceful, I have to let them be. I know, Sarah said. Doesn't make it easier to see, though. One of the protest leaders was a man named David Hutchins. He had lost his job in the economic disruption that followed first contact, and he blamed the Villani. When Sarah heard he wanted to talk, she agreed to meet him at the valley border. Hutchins was younger than she expected, maybe 30, with tired eyes and angry posture. You know you're making a mistake, right? He said without preamble. Letting them stay here. Why do you think that? Sarah asked, genuinely curious. Because they're not human. They don't belong here, and who knows what diseases they brought, what they're really planning. You're being naive. Maybe, Sarah admitted, but I'd rather be naive and kind than suspicious and cruel. Those people didn't choose to crash here. They're making the best of a bad situation just like anyone would. Easy for you to say. You're famous now. You're getting rich off this. Some of us lost everything. Sarah felt a flash of anger but controlled it. I'm not getting rich. I'm working 18-hour days trying to help 200 refugees and manage a ranch. And I'm sorry you lost your job, Mr. Hutchins, I truly am. But that's not their fault. The economic disruption would have happened regardless. First contact was always going to change things. So we should just accept it? Accept that our world is being invaded? They're not invading. They're surviving. There's a difference. Hutchins shook his head. You're wrong. And someday you'll see that. I just hope it's not too late when you do. He walked away and Sarah felt troubled, not because she doubted her choice, but because she understood his fear. Change was scary. The unknown was terrifying. And it was easier to blame refugees than to accept that the universe was bigger and more complicated than anyone had imagined. That evening, Shektara found Sarah sitting on her porch, looking tired. The Villani leader had learned to read human body language surprisingly well. You're troubled. Just thinking, Sarah said. About fear and change and how hard it is to be patient with people who are scared. We have same problem, Shektara said, settling beside her. Not all Villani are happy here. Some want to leave immediately, find new world far from humans. They are afraid you will turn on us. They remember what hegemony did. They cannot trust easily. What do you tell them? I tell them that fear is reasonable, but it should not control us. I tell them that these humans chose to help when they could have hurt. I tell them to wait, watch, and maybe learn to trust slowly. She paused, but I understand their fear. Trust is hard when you have been betrayed before. Sarah nodded. Same with humans. A lot of people have been hurt by their own kind, let alone strangers. Trust is always a risk. But necessary risk, Shektara said. Without trust, there is no connection. Without connection, there is only isolation. And isolation is slow death for social species like us. Like you. They sat together in companionable silence as the stars came out. The same stars that the Villani had traveled between. The same stars that humans had dreamed of reaching. Two species looking at the same universe, beginning to understand each other. The medical breakthrough came 3 months into coexistence. Dr. Morrison had been working with a Villani healer named Shilket, comparing their biological knowledge. One evening, they discovered something remarkable. Look at this, Doc Morrison said excitedly, showing Sarah and several others a holographic display that combined human and Villani medical imaging. The Villani healing compound, when properly adapted, can stimulate human cellular regeneration, and our surgical techniques can be enhanced by their natural biocrystals. Together, we can treat injuries and illnesses that neither species could cure alone. The first test case was a human child, Emma Rodriguez, who had been in a car accident and was slowly dying from internal injuries. Human surgery had done what it could, but it was not enough. With the parents' desperate permission, Doc Morrison and Shilkette tried their combined treatment. It worked. Emma recovered completely in 3 days, a healing process that should have taken weeks if it worked at all. The news spread instantly. Here was concrete proof that cooperation between species produced results neither could achieve alone. "This is what we can be," President Rodriguez said in an address to the nation. Emma was her niece, and the president's voice shook with emotion. "Together we are stronger than apart. This child lives because a human doctor and an alien healer chose to work together, to trust each other, to build something new from their different knowledge. This is the future we can have if we choose it." But with success came new tensions. Some people demanded access to Vellani medical technology immediately. Others feared that humans would become dependent on alien science. Pharmaceutical companies worried about their profits. Religious groups debated the ethics of using alien compounds. The questions were endless and complicated. Shektara addressed these concerns in a recorded message that was broadcast worldwide. "We do not offer our knowledge as trade or weapon," she said through her translator. "We offer it as gift because gifts were given to us. When we crashed, we were helped without demand for payment. We were treated with compassion without expectation of return. This is how we wish to respond, with generosity because generosity was shown to us." The message resonated with millions, though others remained skeptical. But slowly, steadily, the balance tipped toward acceptance. More countries opened their borders to Vellani refugees, though the Montana Valley remained the primary settlement. More scientists began collaborative projects. More ordinary people began to see the possibilities instead of just the problems. Marcus and Kliktar started a school program, teaching human and Vellani children about both cultures. It was chaotic and messy, with misunderstandings and mistakes, but the children adapted faster than the adults. Within weeks, you could see mixed groups of human and Vellani kids playing games that required no translation, laughing at jokes that worked in both languages. "They are building something we cannot imagine," Shektara observed to Sarah as they watched the children. "They have no memory of our worlds being separate. To them, this mixed life is normal. They are the first generation of new future." Sarah smiled. "My grandmother used to say that children are wiser than adults because they haven't learned to be afraid of differences yet." Maybe she was right. As months passed, the valley transformed. Vellani gardens grew beside human crops, using techniques that enriched the soil for both. Mixed architecture appeared, human structures enhanced with Vellani biocrystal lighting and temperature regulation. The community center hosted events in both languages. The local school had its first Vellani teacher, and the Vellani Learning Center had its first human instructor. It was not perfect. There were conflicts over resources, misunderstandings about customs, arguments about the right way to do things. Some humans remained hostile. Some Vellani remained fearful. But more and more, these were becoming exceptions rather than rules. One evening, Sarah found herself at a party celebrating the completion of major repairs to the Vellani ship. The mood was bittersweet. The ship could leave now if the Vellani chose. They could continue their search for an uninhabited world, could rebuild their society far from humans. But as Sarah looked around the gathering, at humans and Vellani talking, laughing, sharing food and stories, she wondered if they would choose to leave. This place, this impossible mixing of two species, had become something neither group had expected. It had become home. Shektara approached Sarah, her patterns glowing a complex mix of colors. "We must make decisions soon," she said. "Ship is repaired enough for travel. We could leave. What will you choose?" Sarah asked. "I do not know yet. We will vote, as is our way. But I think—" She paused, her translator struggling with the concept. "I think perhaps we have found what we were looking for. Not empty world to hide on, but full world that chose to share with us. Maybe that is better. Maybe that is best possible outcome of our accident." Sarah smiled. "Whatever you decide, you'll always have friends here." "I know," Shektara said. "That is why decision is hard. Leaving is leaving family now. But staying is accepting we will never see others from our fleet again. Both choices have pain. Both choices have joy. How do we choose?" "The same way you've done everything else since you got here," Sarah said. "Together." Talk to your people, talk to us, and whatever you decide, we'll support it. That night, as Sarah fell asleep, she thought about the past 6 months, the fear and hope, the conflicts and connections, the slowly building trust between two species that should have been strangers, but had become something more. Whatever the Vellani decided, one thing was certain. Humanity had learned that they were not alone in the universe. And more importantly, they had learned that being not alone could be beautiful instead of terrifying. The choice was made not through grand speeches or political negotiations, but through small moments. A Vellani child asking to stay because this was where their friends were. A human offering to teach Vellani farming techniques for when they found their new world. Quiet conversations between beings who had learned to see each other as people first and aliens second. Coexistence was never going to be perfect, but it was possible. And possible was more than either species had dared to hope for when that damaged ship had fallen from the sky 6 months ago. The warning came at 3 a.m, 14 months after the crash. Every space monitoring station on Earth detected it simultaneously. An object entering the solar system at impossible speeds, decelerating in ways that violated human understanding of physics. The object was a ship, and it was headed for Earth. Sarah's phone rang, dragging her from sleep. It was Colonel Rodriguez, now General Rodriguez, after her promotion. "Sarah, we have a situation. Get the Vellani leadership to safety, now." "What's happening?" "Something's coming. And according to our Vellani friends, it's nothing good." "Move fast." Sarah was already pulling on clothes, yelling for Marcus. Within minutes, they were running toward the Vellani settlement. The entire valley was waking up, alarms sounding, lights turning on. People who had gotten comfortable over the past year suddenly remembered that comfort was fragile. Shektara met her at the community center, her patterns flashing urgent red. "They found us. The hegemony found us. Are you sure?" "The ship's signature. Our sensors recognize it. It is scout vessel Hunter class. They follow refugees. They punish those who run." Her translator could not fully convey the terror in her voice, but Sarah heard it anyway. "How long do we have?" "Hours, maybe less. They can move very fast when they choose." President Rodriguez convened an emergency session with world leaders. The conversation was broadcast to every nation, every military command, every person who wanted to watch. There was no time for secrets. "The Vellani inform us that this vessel belongs to something called the Korthax hegemony," the president said. Her face was calm, but her hands gripped the podium tightly. "They are the force that the Vellani were fleeing. They have tracked the refugees to Earth, and they have sent us a message." She played the transmission. The voice was mechanical, translated by the same kind of universal translator the Vellani used. "People of Earth, you harbor enemies of the hegemony. This is violation of galactic law. Surrender the fugitives within 24 hours or be designated hostile world. This is only warning you will receive." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. 24 hours to decide whether to hand over 200 refugees or face war with an alien military force that could cross solar systems in days. The argument started immediately. Some leaders advocated for immediate surrender. Why risk human lives for aliens who had only been on Earth for a year? Some called for evacuation, moving the Vellani to space and hoping the hegemony would follow them away from Earth. Others wanted to negotiate, to buy time to find some diplomatic solution. President Rodriguez let them talk for 30 minutes. Then she spoke. "We are done debating. Here is what we're going to do. Nothing. We are not surrendering refugees to an empire that will execute them. We are not negotiating with bullies. We are not running away from this. The Vellani are under Earth's protection, and that protection means something or it means nothing." "Madam President," someone protested, "they could destroy us. We don't know what kind of weapons they have." "Neither do they know what we have," Rodriguez countered. "And more importantly, they don't know what we are. It's time they learned." The president's message to the Korthax was simple and direct. The Vellani refugees are citizens of Earth, granted full legal protection under our laws and international treaties. They are not fugitives. They are not property. They are people, and they are under our protection. Leave our solar system immediately. If you attempt to take them by force, you will learn what it means to threaten humanity. This is your only warning." The response came within an hour. "Your species is primitive and ignorant of galactic realities. You have no authority here. We will take what is ours. Resist and be destroyed." "Well," General Rodriguez said from the military command center, "I guess we're doing this." Earth's military forces mobilized with speed that surprised even themselves. Every available ship, satellite, and weapon platform was moved into defensive positions. It was not much compared to what science fiction had imagined. Humanity had barely reached Mars. Their weapons were designed for fighting each other. Not advanced alien warships, but humans had something else. Creativity born from desperation, and a very bad habit of refusing to give up even when they should. Marcus found Sarah in the barn, loading supplies into the truck. "Mom, they're saying we should evacuate the valley." "We're not leaving." "Mom, we are not leaving them, Marcus. If the hegemony wants to take the Velani, they'll have to go through us first. That's not negotiable." Kliktar appeared in the doorway. He had grown to nearly Marcus's height now. His carapace hardened to full adult strength. "Sarah Chen, Marcus, you should go. This is not your fight. We brought this danger to you. We should face it alone." "That's where you're wrong," Sarah said firmly. "This became our fight the moment we chose to help you. You don't get to take that back now. Your family. You don't abandon family." Shektara came to see Sarah that afternoon. The Velani leader looked older than she had a year ago, her patterns dimmer. "There may be a way to stop this without violence." "What way?" "We surrender ourselves. We go to ship willingly. Hegemony gets what they want. Earth is spared." "Absolutely not." "Sarah, no. I've lived 51 years and I've learned that bullies only stop when someone stands up to them. If we give in now, if we teach the universe that threatening Earth works, we'll never be safe. More importantly, you'll never be safe. There will always be someone to run from. It has to stop somewhere. It stops here. You would risk your whole species for us?" "I would risk everything for what's right. That's what being human means. Or at least it's what being human should mean." The Korthax ship entered Earth's orbit 18 hours after first contact. It was massive, dwarfing anything humanity had built. It positioned itself above the Montana Valley, a clear message. "We know where they are, and we will take them." Admiral James Kowalski commanded the hastily assembled human fleet from the USS Endeavour, a ship that had been designed for deep space exploration, but was now Earth's flagship in humanity's first space battle. He was a career military officer who had spent 40 years preparing for conflicts that made sense. This was not one of them. "Sir," his communications officer said, "the Korthax are hailing us." "Put them through." The alien face that appeared on screen was reptilian, with cold eyes and a contemptuous expression. "I am Commander Zektar of the Korthax Hegemony. You have one final chance to avoid destruction. Deliver the refugees to us immediately. This is Admiral Kowalski of Earth's Defense Forces. The refugees are staying where they are. Leave our system now or face the consequences." Zektar actually laughed. "Consequences? From primitives who have barely left their planet? You amuse us. We have conquered 100 worlds. Your weapons are toys compared to ours. Stand aside, or we will move you aside." "You're probably right," Kowalski admitted. "Your ship is bigger. Your weapons are better. You've got experience conquering planets. But you know what you don't have? You don't have a reason to fight. You're here because some refugees escaped and you want to make an example of them. We're here defending our home and our people. That makes all the difference." Brave words from Dead Man. Maybe. But let me tell you something about humans. We're really, really bad at giving up. We'll fight with everything we have, and when that's gone, we'll fight with what we can improvise. We'll make this expensive for you. And even if you win, everyone in the galaxy will know that Earth fought, that Earth protected its people, that humanity doesn't surrender. Zektar's expression shifted slightly. Was that uncertainty? "You would all die for 200 refugees who are not even your species?" "In a heartbeat," Kowalski said. "Because that's who we are. And I think you're about to learn that the hard way." The Korthax ship opened fire. The battle that followed would be studied for generations. Humanity's weapons were primitive compared to the hegemony's technology, but they were used with tactical brilliance and absolute desperation. Earth's fleet coordinated with ground-based weapons, creating overlapping fields of fire. They used kinetic kill vehicles, nuclear weapons, and even experimental railguns that had never been tested in actual combat. The Korthax ship shrugged off most of the damage. Its shields absorbed nuclear detonations that should have vaporized it. But humans kept fighting. They adapted their tactics in real time, targeting what seemed like weak points, coordinating attacks to overwhelm the shields for brief moments. And then someone had a crazy idea. "Sir," a young weapons officer said, "what if we don't try to penetrate their shields? What if we just blind them?" Kowalski understood immediately. Do it. Humanity had thousands of satellites in orbit, many of them obsolete or inactive. They detonated all of them simultaneously around the Korthax ship, creating a debris field that scattered radar and sensor readings. In the confusion, Earth's fighters launched suicide drones, cheap, fast, and carrying just enough explosive to damage sensors and weapon ports. It was not sophisticated. It was barely organized. But it was effective. The Korthax ship began to have problems targeting accurately. Its shields were still strong, but its eyes were clouded. And humans exploited every weakness with the focused intensity of a species that knew it was outmatched but refused to accept defeat. On the ground, the Vehlani watched in stunned silence. They had seen the hegemony conquer worlds. They had never seen anyone fight back successfully. "They are doing this for us," Shektara whispered. "Dying for us." "They're doing it for all of us," Sarah corrected. "For every refugee, every person fleeing tyranny, every being who just wants to be free. They're proving that compassion isn't weakness, that protecting the vulnerable is worth fighting for." The battle lasted 6 hours. The Korthax ship damaged. 12 human vessels destroyed 6 satellites and killed 37 human defenders. But it also took damage. Real damage. Enough damage that Commander Zektar made a calculation he had never expected to make. The cost of taking these refugees was too high. "This is not over," Zektar broadcast. "The hegemony will return with greater force. You have made enemies you cannot comprehend." "Good," Kowalski replied. "Now get the hell out of our solar system." The Korthax ship retreated, limping away faster than light, leaving behind a solar system full of humans who had just fought their first interstellar war and won, not through superior technology or numbers but through sheer stubborn refusal to give up. When the all-clear sounded, Sarah found herself crying. Marcus held her while Kliktar wrapped his limbs around both of them, his patterns flashing between grief for the humans who died and gratitude that could not be expressed in words. President Rodriguez addressed the world one more time that night. She looked exhausted and there were tears on her face. "Today, humanity proved something important," she said. "We proved that when we choose compassion, we commit to it fully. We don't just help when it's easy or safe. We help when it costs us something, when it puts us at risk, when it demands everything we have. 37 people died today defending refugees who aren't human, defending principle that protection means something, defending the idea that some things are worth fighting for. They died as heroes, and they will be remembered as the first humans to fight not for territory or resources or revenge, but for someone else's freedom. That is who we are at our best. That is who we choose to be." Sarah watched the address with Shektara beside her. The Vehlani leader was silent for a long time after it ended. "You cannot know what this means to us," she finally said. "To be worth fighting for. To be protected. Not because of what we can offer, but because you believe we deserve protection. The hegemony taught us that power is everything, that mercy is weakness, that only strength matters. You have shown us something different. You have shown us that compassion is its own kind of strength, perhaps the strongest kind." "We learned that from you," Sarah said. "You came here afraid, vulnerable, desperate, and you chose to trust us anyway. That took courage. We just tried to be worthy of that courage." As dawn broke over the valley, both species began the work of healing and rebuilding. They had won the battle, but everyone knew the war was far from over. The hegemony would return, and next time they would be ready for human tactics. But humans would be ready too, and they would not be alone. 5 years passed like water flowing around stones, reshaping everything it touched. The Montana Valley had grown. What started as a refugee camp had become a proper town, the first truly mixed human Vehlani settlement in history. Buildings combined human architecture with Vehlani biocrystal technology, creating structures that regulated their own temperature and lit themselves with soft, living light. Gardens grew food using techniques from both species, producing yields that were better than either could achieve alone. Sarah Chen was 66 now, her hair more gray than black, her hands weathered from decades of ranch work, but her eyes were sharp as she stood on her porch, watching the sun rise over a valley that had become something nobody could have imagined that night when a desperate ship fell from the sky. Marcus was 22, teaching at the settlement school alongside Kliktar, who had become his co-teacher and closest friend. Their classes were taught in both English and Vehlani, to students who moved seamlessly between languages and saw nothing strange about learning math from a human and biology from an insectoid being who could demonstrate bioluminescent communication in real time. The world had changed too. After humanity fought the hegemony and survived, everything shifted. Earth was no longer isolated and ignorant. They were known now, marked in galactic databases as both primitive and dangerously protective. Some species avoided them. Others became curious. 3 years after the battle, another refugee ship arrived. This one carried the Toller, amphibious beings fleeing persecution from their own kind. They had heard the story of Earth, of the blue planet that protected refugees, and they came seeking sanctuary. Earth granted it without hesitation. Then came the Mishka, small mammals running from environmental collapse on their homeworld. Then the Krell, crystalline beings who needed specific radiation frequencies to survive. Then others, one ship at a time. All of them desperate, all of them hoping for the same thing the Vehlani had found. Earth became known as Sanctuary. It was not the official name, but it was what the refugees called it, and eventually everyone else did too. The valley now housed 7 different species. It was chaos most days. Beautiful chaos as beings with completely different biologies and cultures learned to live together. There were conflicts, misunderstandings, mistakes, but there was also cooperation, friendship, and something new being built from the pieces of many different worlds. President Rodriguez had served 2 terms and was now simply Elena, though she remained one of Earth's representatives in the growing interstellar community. She visited the valley regularly, always staying at Sarah's ranch, always wanting to see how the impossible experiment was progressing. "You know," Elena said one morning over coffee, "historians are going to argue about you for centuries, whether you're a hero or just someone who happened to be in the right place at the right time." Sarah laughed. "I'm just someone who saw people who needed help. Anyone else would have done the same." "That's where you're wrong. Not everyone would have. You made a choice, and that choice changed everything. Don't diminish that." They sat in comfortable silence, watching as children of 7 species played together in the field. The games they invented required no single language, no shared culture. They were pure joy, the universal language of young beings finding friendship. Shektara was older now, too, her carapace showing signs of age. She moved slower but thought no less clearly. She had become something like a mayor for the settlement, mediating disputes and helping new refugees adjust to life on Earth. She found Sarah later that morning, settling beside her on the porch. "More ships detected at edge of system," she said. 3 of them. "Refugee vessels, we think. One of them is broadcasting distress signal. How long until they arrive?" 2 days if they maintain current speed," Sarah nodded. "I'll let the Refugee Council know. We'll need to prepare housing and medical support." "Do we know what species?" "Not yet. But does it matter?" "No," Sarah smiled. "I suppose it doesn't." This was routine now. Almost monthly new refugees arrived. Earth had developed protocols, systems for integration, methods for helping traumatized beings adjust to a multi-species society. It was not perfect, but it worked better than anyone had expected. The settlement had also become an economic hub. Vehlani medical technology had revolutionized human healthcare. Toller water purification systems were being adapted for Earth's oceans. Mishka agricultural techniques were feeding millions. In exchange, human engineering and manufacturing capabilities helped refugees rebuild their ships, repair their technology, or adapt to life on Earth permanently. More than half the original Vehlani had chosen to stay permanently. They considered Earth their home now, and their children born on this world knew no other. The same was true for many of the other refugee species. They had come seeking temporary shelter and found something worth staying for. But the galaxy had not forgotten about Earth. The hegemony had not returned, but everyone knew they would eventually. Other powers had begun to take notice of this strange world that sheltered refugees and somehow made it work. Some were curious. Some were concerned. Some saw opportunity. The first official alien ambassador arrived 4 years after the battle. She was from the Free Worlds Coalition, a loose alliance of independent planets that tried to stay neutral in galactic conflicts. Her name was unpronounceable, so she went by Ambassador Tor. Earth is anomaly, she told the UN General Assembly in her first speech. Most species reach stars and find conflict. They join alliances for protection, pay tribute to empires for safety. They learn to be careful, to be afraid, to stay small and hope they are not noticed. Earth did opposite. Earth fought when they should have surrendered, protected when they should have abandoned, welcomed when they should have rejected. This makes no sense, and yet it works. We do not understand why, but we wish to learn. The Free Worlds offered Earth membership in their coalition. It was a significant offer, bringing access to technology, trade, and mutual defense. But it also came with obligations, rules, and compromises. The debate lasted months. In the end, Earth joined, but on their own terms. They would maintain their refugee sanctuary status. They would make their own decisions about who to protect. They would not abandon the principles that had defined their first contact with other species. The Free Worlds agreed, partly because they had no choice, but partly because they recognized that Earth's approach, however strange, was producing results. Sarah watched all of this from her ranch, content to let others handle the politics. She had work to do, refugee families to help settle, young beings to mentor, a community to nurture. The big picture diplomacy was important, but so was making sure the Mishka family down the road had enough water for their environmental needs, and that the Krell child who was being bullied at school found acceptance. Marcus and Kliktar's school had become a model for mixed-species education. Dozens of similar schools had opened around the world, each one adapting the Valley's methods to their own communities. They taught not just subjects but understanding, not just facts but empathy. Their graduates moved easily between species, seeing differences as interesting rather than threatening.